Hey everybody, hope you guys are all healthy and safe. So you're watching footage shot of the main camera of the Asus Zenfone 9. So the Zenfone 9 has a couple of specialties. The first is that it is a really small phone. The second is that this camera is actually built on top of a miniature gimbal. So that allows you to do smoother panning like this. So this gimbal works just like the mini gimbal system seen in Vivo's flagships, meaning it will account not just for up and down and left and right movements, but also the yaw movement, meaning like this. So that means if I shake the phone like this, footage should remain a little bit more stable than most other phones, and definitely more so than a camera. Now having a gimbal stabilization means the phone will offset some of the shakiness that you get when you try to film with one hand like I'm doing right here. Check out this B-roll of the Huawei MateBook 16S I filmed. You do want to film in good lighting to get the most potential out of the gimbal, but when you film at night it still helps a little bit. But don't expect miracles. You're still going to get a little bit of micro shakes and jitters if you are walking a lot, or right here I'm on a very rocky tram ride. But this is still better stabilization than many other phones would be able to get in this situation. Okay, so you can probably tell I'm quite excited and impressed by the gimbal camera system. That's because I've actually tested several phones in the past with a gimbal camera system before, Vivo's flagship phones. But Vivo always put the gimbal on secondary lenses, so it supported the ultra-wide camera or the telephoto zoom lens. And I just don't really want to shoot with those cameras as much as I want to shoot with the main camera, because the main camera, as the name implies, it's the main camera, it's the best camera on the phone. But anyway, that's me. I'm obviously someone who enjoys vlogging and filming videos more than the average person. I think for the average person, they will still be most drawn to the Asus Zenfone 9 because of this, the fact that this phone is a small phone. This is just a 5.9-inch OLED display, so the phone overall is smaller, lighter than just about any other Android phone on the market right now. In fact, the only other real comparison is the iPhone 13 mini. And iPhone 13 mini is still smaller because it has a 5.4-inch screen. But I think 5.4 inches is actually too small. Like, content is looking very, very cramped on this display. 5.9 inches is just about the right size, in my opinion, for people who want to be able to one hand use a phone, but still be able to enjoy immersive TikTok and Instagram stories. Another thing that people are going to love about the Asus Zenfone 9 is the price. So the suggested retail price of this phone starts at $699 US in the US and 799 euros in Europe. Now some of you guys might be like, that's quite a big price gap between the two numbers. Well, that's because the US price does not include taxes. But the European price includes the VAT, which is the European version of taxes. Now, I don't know the prices in Asia yet, but I'm pretty sure it'll be a little bit lower than both the US and European prices. So as usual, we in Asia have the best options. And for this price, you're getting almost all flagship components. So this phone runs on the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1. So that's the newest Snapdragon chip, and the biggest update over the standard Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 is much improved battery efficiency. Like, yeah, the processing power is a little bit better, but where you see improvement, it's battery life. And this phone's battery life is significantly better than any other small phone I've tested in recent years. More on that a little bit later. Let's look at the other components. So this display, 5.9-inch Samsung AMOLED panel, refresh rate up to 120 Hz, but it is not an LTPO panel, meaning the refresh rate cannot go from 1 to 120. You have to pick either 60, 90, or 120. But it is covered by Gorilla Glass Victus, and maximum brightness, it's 800 nit standard or 1000 peak max brightness, so that's bright enough for outdoor use, but it's visibly not as bright as a Galaxy S22 Ultra screen. Now, another cool thing Asus has done with the hardware engineering is the fact that it kept this phone mostly the same size as last year's Asus Zenfone 8, despite the fact that all the internal components have gotten bigger. So the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, the chip is supposedly 10% larger than the Snapdragon 888 used in last year's phone. The camera system is 40% larger in size than the camera system in last year's Zenfone 8. And the battery size and thermal cooling system are both larger than what's seen in last year's Zenfone 8 too. So despite all of that, Asus still somehow managed to keep the overall dimensions of the phone very similar to last year. So like I said, this is still a small phone, So Asus said they really wanted to keep the width of the phone under 70 millimeters, and they've done that again. The 70 millimeter width, it's a number that Asus was really aiming for, because that means most people above like 15 years old will be able to reach the thumb all the way across the screen. That makes the phone a lot easier for one-hand use. Now, the Zenfone 9 is a little bit thicker than usual at 9.1 millimeter, but the phone is still really lightweight at 169 grams. So how did Asus manage to keep the weight so light even though all the components inside got larger? Remember, they added a whole new gimbal camera system in here and the thickness increased by a little bit. So first is this back material. It's polycarbonate and it's lighter than glass. It feels a little bit like the sandstone finish that the original OnePlus phone came in. I do really like the texture and feel of this back. However, I do think this black color is a little bit boring. I've seen product shots of other colorways like the blue model. I think it looks much better. So the other thing that Asus engineers did to counter the fact that all the components are larger is to make the phone a little bit boxier. Asus said that this boxier look effectively increases the internal capacity of the phone without increasing the dimensions of this height and width. And if you pay attention, you can actually see some unique craftsmanship here on Asus's part. So this phone has a flat bottom and flat sides, but the corners rounded. But if you pay attention, you'll see that the SIM tray actually curves around the corner. So you can see that they actually curved the flap right here that covers the SIM tray. So there's a 4,300 mAh battery inside. That number sounds a little bit small if you're used to flagships, but you have to remember this is a small phone, so that number is actually quite big for a phone of this size. And like I said, thanks to Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 being much more efficient than before, battery life on this phone can be considered really good for a small phone. So yesterday I had a really heavy day. I was out in the morning and I worked in the afternoon and I went out at night with my girlfriends and her friends. And the Asus Zenfone 9 lasted me 11.5 hours on a single charge with about 5 hours of screen on time. These are really good numbers for a small phone, because something like an iPhone 13 mini can only last me about 9 hours on a single charge. And the iPhone 12 mini before that was even worse, only giving me about 7 to 8 hours of battery life on a single charge. Now this phone doesn't have wireless charging, but you do get a 30-watt charging brick that comes with the packaging. You also get a free case too. Okay, let's get back to the camera system. So the main camera, Sony IMX766 50 megapixel shooter with a sensor size of 1/1.56 inch. When you move the phone, you actually see the lens shift left and right. This is to offset that yaw movement that I showed you earlier. Now down here is a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, Sony IMX363. It has a 113-degree field of view and also doubles as a macro sensor. The selfie camera here in the upper left corner is a 12 megapixel Sony IMX663 camera. Okay, now as for photo quality, you've seen some samples, you probably think the camera looks pretty good so far. Well, yes and no. During the day, photos look sharp, everything looks punchy, well detailed. But at night, I'm not a big fan of Asus's image processing, particularly the color science. If you look at all these images at night, they look a little bit overly contrasty. I mean, I think Asus is going for a look that really pop off the screen, but exposure is pretty good, but you know, some of the neon lights are overexposed. It's nowhere close to like a Vivo X80 Pro, which will find perfect balance almost every single time. Asus turns to night mode very easily and very frequently. So even when in a scene it's not that dark, Asus would turn on night mode and it's like a 2-second night mode. So the first night that I was using this camera, I was out and about with my friends, you'll see that a lot of the photos I shot were blurry because I just was not expecting the camera to take 2 seconds to snap a photo when the scene I'm in is not even that dark. I don't know why Asus decided to be that aggressive with the night mode, because the main camera, Sony IMX766, it's a pretty respectable hardware. It has an image sensor size of 1/1.56 inches, so it's not a small image sensor size. So ultimately, after the first night, I just turned off night mode entirely and just shot as it is. And once I turned off night mode, or I started shooting things that weren't moving, I started getting good night shots. Now do keep in mind I'm nitpicking because I am very, very hard to please, because I am fortunate and privileged enough to get to test every smartphone. Right before I started using the Asus Zenfone 9, I was on the Xiaomi 12S Ultra with a 1-inch image sensor, so my standards are a little bit higher than usual. For the most part, just look at these samples, I think the Asus Zenfone 9's main camera is pretty good, just not, you know, anywhere close to like the best cameras I've tested this year. Now the ultrawide camera is pretty good during the day. As you can see, dynamic range is on point, the photo is reasonably sharp, but if you move to low light scenarios, it suffers a little bit just like every other ultrawide camera on the market. Now even though the photography abilities of the Asus Zenfone 9 is just average, I think the video capabilities are really damn good. I already showed you a bunch of videos earlier. I'm just a big fan of the gimbal stabilization system and what it does to videos. Just look at these footage here. Everything here is handheld. This is just really smooth, really fluid. And the fact that this phone is so lightweight makes it a really good kind of like action vlogging camera. In fact, Asus thought of that because they've designed this little clip that you can clip onto. It's like a phone case, and then there's a clip with a string that allows you to wear it on your backpack like this, and then you can pull the phone out anytime with a retractable string. So you can pull it out, take a picture, then immediately have it zip back here, and you can go about your adventure. And the fact that this phone is not that heavy means that you can wear it like this and not feel like it's weighing down on your body. I didn't have access to this case unfortunately, but I'm probably gonna buy one because I really do think this phone's video capabilities is good enough for me to use as like an adventure camera if I'm going cycling or I'm going on a hike or something. There's also IP68 water and dust resistance and really good stereo speakers for a phone of this size. Now looking at software, this phone runs Android 12 with Asus Zen UI on top, and I love it. Zen UI looks like typical stock Android. It doesn't really, change a lot that doesn't need to be changed, but at the same time, it is highly customizable. Basically, all my favorite shortcut gestures are here, like 3 fingers swipe down to grab a screenshot, double tap to lock the screen, double tap to wake the screen. And also when you're playing music, you can control music playback by swiping on the screen. So you draw a pause symbol to pause, you do it again to play, you swipe an arrow to skip track. Now this phone uses a side-mounted fingerprint scanner on the right side, that's part of the power button. It works really fast, and also this panel here is touch sensitive. I've set it so now that if I swipe down like this, it will bring down the notification shade. Swipe it down, bring it down, swipe it back up to bring it up. You can also assign tasks for the phone to do when you either long press or double tap on this power button. So I like that right now I've set it so if I double tap, it will turn on voice typing. Testing, testing, can you hear me? So it's little things like that that make Zen UI such a joy to use. Another example, if I open up an app folder, I like that all the apps open at the bottom of the screen so it's easier for me to reach. I don't know what smartphone makers are thinking nowadays that when you tap open a folder, it opens in the middle. On a larger screen phone, it's really hard for me to reach the top of the screen. So overall, I am really loving the Asus Zenfone 9. I'm not even someone who likes small phones, and this phone way outperformed my expectations. For $799, I think this phone is a no-brainer recommendation for anyone who shoot a lot of smartphone videos, want a flagship phone without paying 4-digit prices, or someone who just want a small phone. If you want a small phone right now, there are not many options out there. This is not only the only option, this is by far the best option. I really like the size and form factor. I really like the software, but most importantly, I love this gimbal camera system. So that's about it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to my channel. I have a lot more content coming out, another busy month coming. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.